There you be. Welcome. It's 6 o'clock. Okay.
I'm asking a question to the format of the rules of questioning and the question and answer part of this meeting. I believe on the last meeting we had October 5th, I believe there was 2 or 3 minutes for us to speak and ask questions. And yet when it came to my turn to make a comment on that night, I was interrupted multiple times by a representative from Davy Tree. The first interruption came after I mentioned the safety issues posed by the planned use of high-core hill at the head of the proposed site, where there are already concerning safety issues with the frequently used crosswalk used by school children and older citizens, with folks who speed through our neighborhood, even sometimes crossing the double yellow line without cars slowing the crosswalk. I was then interrupted with the comment, and I paraphrase, this is exactly the kind of comment we want. Residents participating in the planning of...
So can I ask you a question?
No, excuse me, this is the...
Well, I just wanted to ask how much time you're going to use here.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what he has to say, and apparently he was interrupted the last time, so I think he should be able to get his thought out now.
I mean,
Can you hear about this?
What, yeah, we've seen like this,
Well, we've set aside an hour and a half for comments and for questions. And I think that if we don't want to follow the schedule that we've set.
Well, this is it. We've had a schedule. My time was interrupted last time, so I feel that I should be given the quorum to have my say and to speak and ask about the rules of this meeting, because I do not want to be interrupted, and I've just been interrupted again. People want to hear what I want to say.
Well, actually,
We want to hear the
I think we'd like to follow the agenda. We'd like to.
This is not about the stream project. This is about how the order of questioning.
Well, I can answer your question. The order of answering questions or question and answer is after the presentation. And what we'll do during the question and answer period is we will allow everybody to have a question and have an answer to it. And I don't think that starting off at this point with your comments fits the agenda.
Not a comment, sir.
Well, I believe it was. So if,
No, it's a point of order. I'm questioning it as to whether we will have free time without interruption. And I was interrupted multiple times last time when I was making my statement, my comments.
so I value everybody's time here, okay? And I think all of us should value each other's time. And when we get to the question and answer period per the agenda, people will be allowed to ask questions uninterrupted. And I do believe that will require that the answers be made without interruption. I mean, does that satisfy your point?
No. Will we be given time to make our comments, a specific amount of time without interruption?
It's a question and answer period. We'd like questions. If you have questions about the project, if you want to make a general comment, then perhaps we'll provide a format where you can write that and we'll publish it. But I think that it's unfair to people here tonight to make an extended comment where other people wouldn't be.
The first meeting we had, we were told stuff that was totally misinformation. It was inaccurate, and some of it is inexplicably inaccurate. When we were told there was a cut gas line due to erosion down in Jeffords Hill, I went down there and I saw that it's not a cut gas line. It's an old drain pipe. And it was in the PDF that we gave, and there's example after example. We were given no example whatsoever of stream erosion. None. They were all being either fixed.
Well, perhaps you'd be willing to let them give their presentation and give you some answers.
We've already presentation.
No, you've had mine.
Keep your false information.
You had my presentation, which was a fairly general presentation about how the Columbia Association has been dealing with watershed issues and has been trying to decrease the volume of water heading into our streams. So I guess what I'd ask is if you'd be so kind as to let us follow the agenda and have the presentation made, and then we'll move to the question and answer period.
This is not a question. This is a point of order.
I think he's saying that we're going to be allowed time, and I think that we all would like to hear what you have to say after the, presentation. And I think that we'll make sure that everybody, you said that everybody will be allowed to speak, right? As long as everybody in the room is going to have a chance to ask a question and be allowed to speak. I think
It's already monopolized 10 minutes.
it seems fair.
Well, I tell you folks, you really need to get wise to what is actually happening here. You might want to see this presentation, but the stream restoration projects that have been happening in Columbia have got a lot of problems with them. And this one has a lot of problems with them too. And you're not being told a story, you're being told a very one-sided story.
Sir, I believe you are out of order.
Huh?
I believe you are out of order.
Why am I out of order? Is this a public meeting?
Because you asked the question, you got
Because
to
we're
answer.
here, we have not heard the first one, we'd like to hear this.
Well, I've attended the first one, the second
Well,
one, and this
yeah,
third one,
that's
and I
very
would like
good,
to
but
make
we
a
have
point.
not, and we came here for a 6 o'clock meeting, it's now 10 after, you've wasted 10 minutes of our time because we cannot stay for very long, and we'd like to hear this rather than your complaint. So please, let us hear this presentation, and then we can make up our own minds.
Well, I'd like, if anybody wants to talk to me about what's been going on after the meeting, please meet me.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. All right, real quick, as Mr. Bowers stated, I think you guys have heard enough of me, so I want to do some introductions, and then we're going to turn this over to Wetland Studies staff for the presentation. So, to my right, Scott Petrie, Director, Maryland Division of Wetland Studies and Solutions Incorporated. To my left, Frank Graziano, Vice President.
Take this off so you can see what I look like briefly.
Kelly Petrie. Ingrid Bauer, if you'd kindly, Columbia resident also. Emily Fast. Mike Zancor. Elbridge. Tyler Jones, the design engineer back in the back. And with that, Scott.
Okay. A slightly dark webcam on the computer, but hopefully that makes the screen a little clearer for everybody in the room. So thank you, John, for the introductions. We've got, a good amount of information to cover here today. We got we have the room till right around 8:30. So I'm going to try to knock this presentation in about 45 minutes to an hour to leave about an hour and a half at the end for questions and discussion. Want everybody to know we've been receiving questions that have been forwarded to Columbia Association via email. We've been collecting the questions that have come in the previous presentations. And some of those will hopefully be answered in the presentation tonight. And then we're also working on a point-by-point written response that we will distribute via Columbia Association website as well as the project website that we have set up. What did I do? Oh yeah, thank you. Okay. Sorry, this is my first virtual webinar live meeting. So, okay, so tonight what I want to cover is, who are we? Who's WSSI? Give you a quick overview of the project, a little bit about mitigation banking, discuss the urban watershed problem, look at some of the existing conditions that we see in this stream down through Lake Elkhorn. how we envision correcting the problem, our general design approach, as well as discussing construction and access, monitoring and maintenance, and then using a case study from a similar project that we've completed. And then, as we said, we'll do some question and answer here at the end. So wetland studies have been around since 1991. We were founded by one man who started the company back then. Since then, we've grown to 210 staff, and we have several offices throughout the Mid-Atlantic. Our headquarters is in Gainesville, Virginia, and then our Maryland office is in Millersville, and there's about 20 of us there. In 2014, we joined the Davie Expert Tree Company, so they're our parent company, and the Davie Expert Tree Company is the 9th largest employee-owned company in the nation. So, you know, it's a point of pride that we all share in, you know, the company and how we do as employees. So some of kind of the history on our mitigation history, because this is a mitigation bank. We developed the first private wetland mitigation bank in Virginia, and it was the 4th bank in the US. We also developed the first dedicated stream bank in Virginia. It's called the Northern Virginia Stream Restoration Bank in Reston. Overall, we've done about 73 miles of stream restoration in our company's history, and about 20 of those have been done in Maryland. In addition to that, we've created over 1,000 acres of wetland mitigation, and some of those are really kind of valued public spaces, one of which being the Julie J. Metz Wetlands Bank, as well as the NVSRB, which provides miles of stream that the residents of Reston can enjoy. So what are we talking about doing here at Lake Elkhorn? So we're proposing to do 33,000 linear feet of stream restoration. And this project is being proposed as a stream mitigation bank. It's not for TMDL credit. This is for Clean Water Act, Section 404 impacts to streams. So if somebody goes in and builds a road, or utility lines go in, or housing development, or schools, then that's what this is used for. If they impact the stream, they're required to mitigate for it. This is going to be funded completely with private money. We are not taking public funds for this. When we're done, the streams and the riparian buffer will be placed into a perpetual easement and preserved in perpetuity. And then we'll also establish Columbia Association as the long-term steward. And a percentage of the credit sales from the mitigation then go to the Columbia Association so that they can fund, the long-term maintenance.
Can I ask just a real quick question while we're on that, Rain, if I make it real fast? So back there where it said, you know, to place the streams and riparian buffer in a perpetual easement, will that be as we see them now? That you're going to place them in a perpetual easement? Or is this after the project has been done, the new man-made designed landscape habitat would be placed in a perpetual easement? So we are placing the existing stream valley in a perpetual easement that will contain the restored stream channel. The restored, that's after the work that you said you're going to change it and then place the new. We're going to, we will restore it and then place it in a perpetual easement.
So if I may, I'd like to ask that we not ask questions
Okay.
during the presentation, because this does take away from our time
You're right,
afterwards.
I apologize. I just wanted to ask what we got for the, I'll make it.
So what is a mitigation bank? So it is a process, it's a market-oriented system, and it is where we as a private company, we go ahead and ahead of time, we restore streams or we create wetlands, place it in an easement. And then when a private entity or a public entity that is either doing a public works project or a private development project impacts a stream or wetland, they need to then mitigate for that and purchase credits. It's important to note that mitigation is not kind of a free pass for development. It's actually the third step in a permitting process. The first step is somebody who is implementing a project needs to try to avoid impacting these resources. If they can't avoid them, they need to minimize their impacts to the maximum extent practical. And if they can't do that, then they have to mitigate. So it's kind of the last step down the line. It's also important to note that mitigation needs to be in kind. That means if you impact a wetland, you need to mitigate with a wetland. If you impact a stream, you need to mitigate with a stream. So, you know, I think it's an important point to make that you can't mitigate for an impacted stream with stormwater. And that's an important, I think, point to make based on some of the comments we've seen so far. So why did we choose Columbia? Right, so first you need to avoid.
Remember that the people online can't hear this.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the audience member asked, what was the second step in the mitigation process? So the first step is avoid. The second step is minimize, and then the third step is mitigate. And I would also, if you guys have problems hearing me, please raise your hand and tell me to speak up. I'm sorry. So why do we choose Columbia? One, they've got a coordinated sustainability plan. And that was something that John and Dennis and Miss Boyd spoke about last weekend. It includes stormwater management as well as stream restoration and, you know, energy and other items in that plan. So it is a kind of a coordinated plan. It is not a one, you know, they don't have all their eggs in one basket. There have been previously studies that have identified the impairments. They've included the Columbia Watershed Plan, the Howard County Implementation Strategy. U.S. Fish and Wildlife did a study through this reach a few years back that documented the erosion. The tributary to this tributary to the Little Patuxent River is also listed on MDE's 303D impaired list. And then actually we recently, along with some of our other studies, we recently did a fish survey to kind of start looking at some of the biological aspects of it. And you can see a degradation of, you know, downstream of Lake Elkhorn Dam, you see larger populations of fish. And then as you move upstream of the dam, you know, farther and farther away through all the various blockages, you see kind of reduced populations. These degraded streams are located in green areas, preserved corridors that people that were set aside at the beginning of Columbia. Columbia's identified an issue with the downstream sedimentation in their lakes that they'd like to stop. It includes an entire watershed. So instead of doing kind of piecemeal restoration, we're able to do a long stretch of stream all at once and create an ecologically significant project. As well as most of this area is controlled by the Columbia Association. So there are a few areas where it does go off onto other village or HOA properties. You know, as we move forward, we are going to try to include those into those projects to help make this a complete restoration project. And then quite honestly, we're in a, and then finally, we're in an area that is, you know, there is development. So there is that mitigation demand. So we do have these transportation projects and public works projects and development projects. So there is that mitigation demand. When it comes down to it, what are our project goals? So what we need to do is and what we want to do is we want to provide a functional uplift to this degraded stream system. When, you know, we talk about that, there is a what's called the Maryland Stream Mitigation Framework, and it's a crediting methodology that is based on what's called the stream functions pyramid. So that's this diagram there to the right, and it kind of structures the different functions of a stream, starting with the hydrology in the watershed, and then looks at it all the way up to the biology. So, and as you'll see, they're labeled levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So where we're trying to provide the functional uplift, I've put a little number in the parentheses for which functional lever they're associated with. So we want to restore the floodplain connection, mitigate and slow flood flows. We want to really create a stable channel, both a cross section and a pattern, improve the riparian corridor and habitat. As we reconnect this stream in the floodplain, we want to restore the local groundwater levels, and I'll talk a little more about that, and preserve these green corridors and improve habitat connections. So as we go under the different roads and past the dams, it's segmenting the habitat through the stream corridor for the aquatic and semi-aquatic organisms, and we would like to work to restore that to facilitate that passage. Reduce pollutant loading associated with nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. Mitigate temperature. We'll get to that at the end, sir. And then downstream sediment reduction. So, CA spends a lot of money on dredging their lakes every few years, and we would like to, as part of this, help reduce that sedimentation in the lakes and reduce that cost. Where are we in the project schedule? So what you see here is an anticipated schedule based, it'll be based on or contingent on regulatory agency comments and approvals. I think it's important to point, no design work has been started on this project and construction is not imminent. We are currently in the prospectus stage, which is kind of the preliminary regulatory coordination associated with setting up this bank. That is ongoing. We would hope that we get approvals in the spring or summer of next year. Once we do that, we move into what's called setting up the mitigation banking instrument. And that's the regulatory framework for the bank. And that sets up, what our success criteria are going to be, how we're going to go about the restoration. It sets up financial assurances to make sure what we say is going to happen is going to happen. And also sets up the long-term stewardship program. In conjunction with that, once we get past the prospectus stage and get ready to start the MBI, in conjunction with that, we'd like to start the existing conditions survey and design process. So we would hope to start that in the spring or summer of 2022. And then final plans and permits then wouldn't be done until after the MBI approval. So really, if things go smoothly, you're not going to expect any construction until spring or summer of 2024. So almost 3 years from now is really when you could expect it at the earliest. Another real important point is, I'll take questions.
Speak up, please. It's hard to hear.
I'm sorry. Yes, MBI. So that's, if you look up under the bank regulatory approval processes, the MBI is the mitigation banking instrument. That's the regulatory framework for this. So we would not start final plans and permits until we get MBI approval. So that's still at least 2 years down the road. I think another important point is that we are not going to design and construct all 33,000 linear feet at once. So we are going to take this and break it down into several 1,000-foot segments, I would say between 1 and 3,000 feet. And those are manageable construction sections that we will move down through the project area. So we don't construct all 33,000 feet at once, and we don't design all 33,000 feet. So we will move in sections. So throughout this process, there will be opportunities for public comment and public engagement. We're starting this early because we want to keep you guys involved. We want to get your comments, and we want you to be involved with this process. We've held 5 meetings since last fall. This meeting tonight, and then there's going to be a public hearing with the agencies, the MDE and the Corps, on December 8th. So I believe they mailed out public notices to adjacent property owners at the end of last week, and it will be public noticed in the Howard County Times. What's today, Tuesday? It'll be public noticed on Thursday this week. Moving forward, as we get into this plan development stage, we want to have 3 review meetings with the residents per reach. So each reach section will hold 3 meetings. We'll hold the first meeting after we collect our existing conditions data so we can get your initial thoughts on the area. We'll then develop the concept plan, and we'll have a meeting with you to review and solicit your comments then. And then we'll have a meeting to review the final plans once we get to that process so that we can involve you through that. And it's, we want to get your comments so that we can incorporate them as possible, but then we also want to give an opportunity so we can let you know why, the decisions we've made, why we've done them. In addition to this, we've set up a project website and a project email. So the website right there is marylandmitigationbank.com, and the project email is lakeelkhorn@davy.com. And that goes to several of us on the project team. It goes to myself, it goes to Frank, it goes to Kelly, and then it goes to a gentleman at Davy Mitigation, who's our financial partner. And that way we can hopefully get the information in a timely manner out to you. And then just as I'm noticing everybody take pictures of this, we are going to place this presentation on the project website as well. So you'll be able to get a copy of this when we're done. So what have we done to date? So I've mentioned we've submitted the prospectus. It's currently under review by what's called the Interagency Review Team. So that's people from the Corps of Engineers, MDE, DNR, EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they are currently reviewing it. And they'll provide us comments after the public meeting in December. We've done a 6-inch contour interval survey of the project area. We did a fish survey late this summer. We've done a functional stream assessment along the reach that's included in our prospectus. And then we started a kind of limited existing condition survey just in the area upstream of Jackson Pond. So in addition to the topo survey, we did a wetland delineation, a forest stand delineation, and then we surveyed the existing conditions, including the utilities and the bridges and whatnot. And then, so this leads, we have had this question. So when you're out walking in the stream valley, where we've done the survey or where we will do the survey, you're gonna notice flagging. So in each flagging color represents something different. So pink are our wetland delineation flags. Red highlight trees that are greater than 30 inches in diameter. So those are specimen trees associated with our forest stand delineation. Orange are kind of our survey control, and blue are the limits of the tree survey. So we, in addition to what's required for the forest stand delineation, we're going to survey trees that are greater than or equal to 12 inches diameter at breast height. So that's this diameter of the tree at like 4.5 feet off the ground. And that's to help us with planning so we can try to avoid some of these larger trees. And we're doing that within 50 feet of each stream bank on CA property. So if you see those blue flags, that's noting the boundaries of that tree survey. So as part of the tree survey, these trees will be ID'd, they'll be tagged, we'll do a health assessment, and then they'll be survey located. And this is done by, we have ISA certified arborists on staff, and then we also have track certified arborists on staff, which are tree risk assessment qualified. 50 feet on each side, so 100 foot plus the width of the stream. But we're only staying on CA property. We're not going to go on a private property. And then these trees are also, you'll see the silver tag in the picture on the bottom. They're also each assigned a specific ID number for future reference. If you have a specific area of concern from experience, it's a really good way to tell us the area you're talking about, because we'll have these survey located on a map. The tags do not mean that the tree is being removed. It just means that it's larger than 12 inches DBH and it's been surveyed. So how did we get to where we are? So there's what we call the urban watershed problem. So as our watersheds are developed and impervious surfaces increase, infiltration and evapotranspiration decrease, and you end up with more water in the streams faster. And the streams in these valleys evolved under a certain condition. So when you change the watershed, they become unstable and they degrade. And this is, what you see as you're going down through. So we've taken some representative photos starting at High Tor Hill and going all the way down to Oakland Mills Road. And you'll see the map on the one side is a little red dot of where we are. So this one's up by Watercress Place. As we go down through Tamar Drive, a little farther down adjacent to Rouse Parkway, another one adjacent to Rouse Parkway. This is a tributary coming in from Dobbin Road. This is then upstream of Oakland Mills Road. So that kind of works our way down through. So then how do we deal with this? So really needs to be dealt with in multiple ways. And one way are watershed improvements, and that's what Columbia has programs in place to do that and address stormwater at the source. And that can be done by removing impervious surfaces, replacing them with pervious surfaces. So these are some examples from our office in headquarters in Gainesville, Virginia, different types of pervious pavement as well as a green roof. Another way is through stormwater management, either traditional stormwater management. I mean, we all know what a stormwater pond looks like, as well as green roofs, water quality swales, bioretention basins. So that is kind of how you deal with it at the source. And that's something that Columbia Association is working on. And one of the reasons why we like this area as a stream restoration spot. And we did just kind of, so they have done some and they're continuing to do some, but we wanted to get an idea of the scale that would need to be undertaken to kind of treat the whole watershed. So John mentioned last week in his presentation, we did kind of a hypothetical scenario using the drainage area and some traditional stormwater requirements on a project we had in Virginia, the Reston project. So we looked at first, how many stormwater ponds would you have to put in to treat this watershed? Sorry, something popped up. Can you guys still see?
I went ahead and disabled your webcam because we are having slow internet issues.
Okay, thank you. Mike's my IT guru today. So we first figured, did a conventional stormwater scenario. And, based on a storage volume of 3,000 cubic feet per developed acre and controlling the 1-year storm over with a 24-hour release and a pond with an average depth of 3 feet and then 20 feet of grading outside the storage area. This is what we came up with, is that you would need 75 ponds. And on this, it's the area shown in green are the green space in this watershed, and they're currently primarily forested. So if you're going to do this, you would have to put it on public space, not in people's backyards. So this is kind of how it would lay out. And this is what 75 ponds to treat all that impervious acreage looks like in this watershed. And it would result in about 29 acres of disturbance. So the second scenario we looked at was how many bioretention basins would we need to install to treat that same area? So the bottom, you see an example of the Manor Hill rain garden here in Columbia, Maryland. So what we came up with is you would need 830 bioretention facilities to treat all the impervious surfaces. And that's about 37 acres of disturbance from grading that would need to be done. So as I mentioned, that was on a watershed that we worked on in Reston, Virginia. So the drainage area for that was 780 acres. The drainage area for our project area here is about 1,700. So about 2.5 times larger. So if you extrapolate, and it's also, the glade is only 14.5% impervious. The Elkhorn branch is 31.4% impervious. So if you extrapolate that, for the stormwater ponds would result in about 90 acres of disturbance and about 110 acres for disturbance for the bioretention basins. What we are currently estimating preliminarily for the stream restoration is that it'll be about 50 acres of disturbance for comparison. We're not saying this to discourage, like I 100% want stormwater management, and we chose this because Columbia is doing this, but it will require an impact to open space areas and people's backyards to get this to happen. So then the other option is the one that we're pursuing, is the stream restoration option. So there are a couple different ways to go about it. There's what some people call floodplain or base flow restoration, where they cut down the entire floodplain and restore the stream at its existing grade. This method has its merits, but in an urban area like Columbia that has trees, it would result in many trees removed and large volumes of cut material. So that is not the approach that we want to take. What we intend to do is raise the stream bed and connect it to its existing floodplain. It allows us to balance cut and fill as we're doing that, but it also allows us to minimize our impact to the surrounding riparian area. Correct, cut and fill. So that's the dirt you would need to kind of raise the stream. CUT, yes, ma'am. You know, there are areas where when the stream comes out of the culverts, where the culverts are a little lower, in those areas we may have to, you know, we're going to have to stabilize the stream in place because you're not going to be able to raise it up and back water up through the culvert. But that's, you know, you'll see that as we go down through. So we're using what we call kind of a natural channel design process and kind of the evolutionary process of the stream here. Nice little sketch map that one of my colleagues drew a couple years ago. You have a severe condition where it's been susceptible to the kind of the urban watershed condition. We want to take it from that severe condition and move it to an optimal condition. So the stream on the left of the screen is downstream of, or just upstream of Jackson, that should say Pond, and it's one that we'd consider in poor condition. And then the one in the optimal condition is actually an urban stream in Northern Virginia that runs through Eleanor Lawrence Park. So that's kind of what our goal is. Two general design approaches that we plan to take. One is natural channel design. So we're going to try to restore the stream by mimicking to the maximum extent practical a natural stable stream. And then the second one is what's called a step pool stormwater conveyance. And this is a method that we'll use primarily at the downstream end of stormwater outfalls to try to treat the water a little bit when it comes out of the outfalls. And that's kind of a series of step pools downstream of the outfall. And they're underlaid with sand, wood chip filter mix. So during smaller storm events, when the water flows through, it can then filter down through that mix of material. We will consider, you know, we definitely need to consider site constraints. So sometimes when you hear about stream restoration, people restore the pattern and make, you know, kind of large adjustments to the stream pattern and how it flows and meanders. Given the site constraints of where we are, we're generally probably going to have to follow the existing pattern because we don't want to have to cut down lots of trees. We want to see what we can do to stabilize it or restore it in place. And then the bottom left of the screen there, that's the example that John showed last week at Dobbin Road about a year after it's been constructed. So it was constructed in 2018, and I believe he told me that photo was 2019. So that's one that John provided to me. And then the top is kind of a schematic that shows how the sand wood chip mix is placed under the bottom of the pool. So given the watershed conditions, the flow rates, the site constraints, so you know how we're going to be able to adjust the pattern, we are going to need to do some levels of reinforcement. So we will install different types of stabilization structures. We'll use wood. We'll also use rock where necessary. We also will import and install what's called a reinforced bed mix. So it's a stable material that we'll place into the riffles. And I've got a little more detail later on in the presentation to kind of show you what that is composed of. And then this is a natural process, and you know the long-term stability will not happen without planting. So we will plant with heavy native planting densities when we're done. So how do we see the design approach going about? So first things first is we need to get the existing conditions surveyed and out there. So that's the first step. And as I mentioned, once we get done that existing conditions survey, we're going to have a meeting with interested residents. We're going to review it and we're going to discuss the project and kind of get initial comments on it. Then we'll get into the design process where we want to determine, you know, what is the stable dimensions of the stream channel. So what's the bankful width, depth, area need to be. And when I say bankful, that's the point at which the stream fills up and flows out into its floodplain. And then we'll apply that and come up with kind of stable channel dimensions and a stable design. So it's important to note that this is an iterative process. So once we get done that initial concept layout, we will meet with you again and we'll review it and we'll discuss it. We'll see it out in the field and we'll, adjust it as necessary moving forward. So it may take a couple iterations to get from that concept design to the final design. And then even once we get that last step above the schematic of the contractor, it says our arborist contractor field review. So even once we get the project done, and once we get the layout approved and we get all our design approvals and we get ready to start, we actually walk the limits of disturbance and we see where we can make adjustments in the field to save additional trees or minimize our impacts. Because it's, sometimes you'll see something on a plan view and it'll look good, but then when you get out in the field, it's not exactly how it is. So we need to make adjustments. So again, iterative process. We've started and we'll be continuing to do kind of an extensive tree survey. We consider a lot of things when we're designing a stream and determining if one of the surveyed trees need to go. And, we're looking at size and diameter. We're looking at what type of tree it is. Is it a climax species or is it a quick growing kind of more early successional species? What's its existing condition? Is it undercut and is it gonna fall? Short life expectancy when we're done afterwards. Is it dead, dying, or diseased? And then, what kind of impact has it had around it? And that's, the utilities of the road. So is development in the area already kind of doomed the tree? And then finally, what's the proposed condition going to be? So we are going to have to go in there as part of construction with equipment. There could be some impacts to the trees. And what we don't want to do is endanger anybody. So if as part of the construction, we think that a tree is going to become damaged and die later on and fall, we might want to take that on the front end as opposed to risking that it dies, somebody doesn't catch it, and somebody, it could hurt somebody later. So what are some of the other things? So tree clears will be, put in parentheses here, recycled. So we use them as in-stream habitat features, overhead cover. We use them as grade control structures. Some of the brush material can be chipped up and used on natural surface trails around Columbia. And one of the things we did in Reston is we chopped up, the trees that we couldn't use as part of the project that needed to come down. We chopped them up for firewood and distributed it to the residents that wanted it. That's something that we've offered to CA and said, coordinate through you. And if that's amenable to everybody, we'll do it. One of the other items I mentioned is we're going to, under the center schematic, is we're going to raise up the incised stream channel to the floodplain. And this is good because it brings up the local groundwater table. So as a stream becomes incised, the groundwater kind of follows the gravity as well. So when a stream's incised, the water drops down to that lower level. So it misses the root systems of a lot of the adjacent riparian trees. So a lot of the trees you see that are hanging on the stream bank with their roots above the water level, their roots are not involved in nutrient processing. The water is actually cut below it, so they're not actually providing much stability either. So we want to bring the stream up, and that brings that kind of groundwater stream flow interaction and increases it. I think one important point, another important point to bring up is it was brought up during the, is it the Harper's Choice project? What was the Ecotone project? Yeah, during the Harper's Choice project and some of the other comments I've seen talks about that orange iron flock. So there is iron in these soils. As we do raise the stream up and bring in that connection, you are likely to see the iron flock in some of these restored areas. So it happened there. These are the same type of soils, and it would likely happen in this stream reach as well. It is seasonal, it is natural, and it's part of a oxidation process. So just want to be upfront about that. As a result of this, we believe that a healthier ecosystem is going to develop. with the density of species that we put in with the trees, as well as providing habitat for aquatic and semi-aquatic organisms, as well as the birds and the bugs that fly around in the riparian area. You know, we are going to plant the stream banks, densely plant them. So, you know, these areas are going to get shaded. If there is any kind of reduction in canopy, it will be replaced and it will close back in. And then when it comes to the tree loss discussion, when we cut these trees down as part of this project, we can't just go in and push them over with a bulldozer because it's going to create collateral damage. It's a safety hazard. It could take down trees that we don't want to. So what we do is when we remove them, we section them down. And that is an extremely expensive way to cut down a tree. So it is actually also to our benefit to minimize the tree clearing. So, because we are going to have to, you know, it costs us money on our end for construction. I said the tree removal is expensive for us to undertake. So it, you know, in addition to the ecological benefit that the mature trees provide, it also is expensive for us to remove them. So we don't want to remove them if we don't have to remove them. So one of the things we mentioned is we want to establish a stable cross section. So as you know, the flows have increased in these areas, the substrate that's in these cross sections hasn't been able to withstand the flows. So we size it based on the, you know, what's the bankful flow. So we look at regional equations and hydrologic models and figure out when the stream should overtop its banks. And that's how we develop our cross-section shape and size. We also look at ratios, dimensionless ratios developed from natural stable channels, and look at the width compared to the depth and size it that way. And then what we do is we make what's called a constructed riffle material. So it's a mix of kind of a crushed rock that's about, you know, anywhere between 6 and 12 inches in diameter. And then with that, we mix in cobbles, gravels, a little bit of sand, and a little bit of topsoil. And that creates kind of this natural stable material that we can put in the riffles, and it will withstand, you know, the flow rates that these streams experience. And I think an important point is what you'll notice, and you'll see in this pile is, you know, sometimes you see stream restoration projects where people just put in that crushed rock component and not all the other fines and cobbles and gravels. So we do a mix, and it's, you know, from kind of an aesthetic standpoint, you know, as well as a functional standpoint, it does look better. So here's a couple examples of some floodplain reconnection. So this is a 4-year-old project that we did at an outfall in Chevy Chase, Maryland, off of Chevy Chase Lakes Drive. So you'll see on the outfall in the, I'm going to stand up. So there's the outfall in that photo, and then you can kind of see the outfall in the photo on the right. And we raised that up. It's about 4 years old. And then this is another one where I think is a really good example of how we were able to work amongst the existing tree canopy and minimize tree removal. Here's another one we did in Reston, Virginia. So on the picture all the way to the left, you'll notice the red arrow in all these pictures is pointing to the same tree. So you got the pre-restoration condition, you've got it 1 month post-restoration, and then you've got it about 2 weeks ago on the all the way on the right. So you'll see it's stable. The trees are preserved, and you know, shading was maximized. So I mentioned an important point is the revegetation. So when you look at a set of our plans, you know, this is a large portion of it, and we break it down into a couple different areas. So we have the riparian buffer area, which is at the top of the stream bank, what I would call landward, and then we've got the stream bank areas. And this just kind of shows you how we break it down. And then we're also very prescriptive with how we want our planting contractor to plant it. So I've got Besides the color diagram, I've got two examples of just what our stream planting details look like and how we try to have them laid out. As part of it, the riparian zone, we prefer to use gallon-sized container trees when we replant. We need to have, as part of our mitigation requirements, we're going to need to have 460 stems per acre survive. So based on that, we plant around 640 stems per acre. So we overplant to account for die-off and disease. And these quantities and this kind of like percentage that we said we had to overplant is based off of research from Christopher Newport University as well as the Virginia Marine Institute of Marine Science, where they looked at the survivability in mitigation projects of different size plantings. And they looked at bare roots, they looked at tubulings, they looked at gallon size. So based on that research, that's how we selected how many we have to put in. Kind of an example planting, like if we do 3,500 linear foot of restoration, you're looking at about 4,100 trees, 6,000 shrubs, and 7,000 what we call live stakes would go in. So that's about how heavy the planting were. And then at the bottom, I've got a list of the different species that we're going to be planting or that are in our planting schedule. So I'll just, I'm not going to read them all, but I'll leave them there. In addition to that, we do seed immediately. So we apply a seed rate a seed mix at a rate of 125 pounds per acre as soon as an area is done grading. So this includes not only our perennial species and that we want to last, but it also includes cool and warm season erosion control mixes. It's important for stability to get the erosion control species up immediately. And it's also important for trying to temper any colonization by invasive species. And then in addition to the erosion control grasses, those are some of the other plant species that we have in our mix. So here's just kind of an example of a project and the kind of the progression of the revegetation. And this was one where, given the utilities and the alignment, a lot of clearing had been done. So you'll see it 3 months after construction where it's just the ENS grasses. And then the photo in the top right is about 1.5 years. So you're starting to see the native plants as well as the trees pop up. Then 6 years post restoration. And then the bottom one was about 2 weeks ago. So you'll see how the tree cover comes back. So these projects and these plans are going to be heavily scrutinized. So as part of the banking process, we need to go through the interagency review team. The agencies on that are listed up there, the Corps and MDE and others. In addition to that, once we get those approvals, we need to get wetlands and waterways approvals from the Corps of Engineers and the Maryland Department of the Environment. So that's separate from their IRT involvement. We'll need to get grading permits from Howard County, erosion and sediment control approvals from the Howard County Soil Conservation District. Some of the lower areas, I believe, have FEMA floodplains, so we will need to do a FEMA and Howard County coordination for that. When we get to construction, we'll have to do a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit through MDE. And then on top of that, as part of the wetland and waterways process, you've got the EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Maryland DNR, and Native American tribes that are all commenting agencies on our wetland and waterways permit. So these projects throughout the design and permitting process are heavily scrutinized. Okay, try to rip through this a little bit. So then when we get to construction, we are, as part of our, you'll see on this plan, you see the tree symbols on there. And that is, those are a result of our tree surveys, and that's how we plan around it. We highlighted the LOD in red on this so you could see it and how we work around it. As part of the access, we try to utilize spaces that are already cleared. So we try to utilize the trails, utility easements, other open spaces, the breaks between the larger trees to kind of minimize the impact from to those larger tree species. I think it's important, where trails need to be utilized. We recognize that they're important to how Columbia residents get around. So if we get into an area, this is going to be a big point of discussion on if we need to use the trails, and if we do need to use the trails, how do we accommodate the citizens? So we'll work with Columbia Association, as well as the villages, as well as the individual citizens to minimize that impact. Through sensitive areas, we use deck mats. So here's actually a good example of construction access. And this is pre-construction. The deck mattings, they're placed down during construction. And while we do use tracked equipment, which minimizes ground pressure and disturbance, we also use these deck mats in sensitive areas to further minimize the ground disturbance as well. Because it is heavy equipment, things do get torn up. But we try to minimize it where we can, where we're traveling. And then this is that same area. So you look at a pre-restoration, and then this is it, you know, a couple weeks ago on the bottom right. When we do get, you know, these are some photos of construction. The track hose on the working right next to the trees. In some cases, in the middle, we'll use the stream as access. During construction, we use pump around practices. So that's, we don't work in the wet to minimize sediment transport downstream during construction. In Maryland, we are subject to time of year restrictions. So this stream is what's called a use 4P. So it's a recreational trout water, and the P stands for public water supply. So between March 1st and May 31st, we're not allowed to do any in-stream construction work. We'll adhere to noise ordinances. We use articulated equipment, which spins on its axis, and that way it can come in, it can spin, and it can back out without having to turn around. Once we are done construction, we're going to be required to do 10 years of monitoring and maintenance. Exactly what goes into that will be kind of developed with the IRT as part of our MBI process. So you remember that's after we get our prospectus, we develop this mitigation banking instrument, and the monitoring and maintenance is in that. The criteria is going to show how we have met our functional uplift goals, and our credit releases will be based on that. So if we don't meet our goals, we don't get the mitigation credit to sell. So we have to perform. Just some example monitoring criteria, what could be required from, comes from experience on previous projects, is documenting structural stability, showing that we've established the vegetation, both herbaceous cover as well as stems per acre with the trees, and then, you know, some level of invasive species requirements. And then, you know, if the criteria is not met, one, we need to fix it, and two, we don't get that mitigation credit until we can prove that that has been met. And then once that 10-year monitoring period is done, what's called a long-term monitoring plan goes into effect, taken over by a long-term steward, which will be, in this case, Columbia Association, and that will be funded then through a percentage of the credit sale. So they get a breakdown so that, you know, they're not stuck with the bill. We do recognize that invasive species control is critical. It goes into our planning. We think about it often, and, you know, it's challenging. They're there now. There's a seed source where it is. You know, we are not dealing with the entire riparian area, so there will be pressure from outside our project area when we open it up. So certain things we do to try to stay on top of that is the rapid vegetative establishment with the erosion control grasses leading to perennial species. Before our contractors bring any equipment onto the site, they need to clean their equipment. They can't just go from a site, you know, up in Frederick and bring it down here. They need to clean it to minimize the transport. When our planting contractor, before they come in, we inspect the nursery stock. And then if we do start seeing species, you know, it's early treatment. And then in addition, we'll work with Columbia Association groups, you know, the We Warriors, as well as CA staff. So talk a little bit about what we call the Northern Virginia Stream Restoration Bank. So that's 11 miles of stream restoration we did in Reston, Virginia. It's a planned community similar to Columbia. Was built in the 1960s. They preserved their stream valleys. There was limited stormwater management. In the 10 plus years since it's been constructed, from a banking standpoint, it's met its success criteria. In addition to that, we've actually documented that we created 25, this was a stream restoration project. And what we did was, like here, we raised the stream channel up. And what we did was we created about 25 acres of wetlands, forested wetlands. So not the vernal pools that I know is a point of contention, but just kind of the forested wetland area along the stream. The canopy is closed in areas where we did have to take down some trees. And then our success has allowed us to get some additional funding to monitor some research. Some things we're looking at are, how do freshwater mussels affect water quality in some of these stream channels? The effect of bioengineered outfalls. We're looking at invasive species control and how to do that. And then we're also working with USGS to monitor urban hydrology. So just do some photos. Again, I mentioned it was real close to, just similar areas, Columbia. So this is an area where the stream was really close to a neighbor's house and actually went on his property. And when we proposed to move it off, he was upset. He wanted to stay where it was. So we stabilized it on his property. We did have to put in, a small imbricated wall to minimize grading. But then you can see it 1 year after post-construction and then what it looks like now 11 years on. This was another small tributary that came down from a church parking lot. The woman in the left-hand photo is about 5'10" tall. So you can see her standing in this tributary. We restored it to the existing floodplain. You'll see it post-construction in the center. And then you'll see it about 2 weeks ago. And I'm pointing, the red arrow points to the same tree in all those photos. Here's another example. This is an outfall. We stabilized the stream next to it, also resulted in saving that walking path. And the arrow in the bottom is then pointing again to that outfall. So you'll see the vegetation growing up and then the, kind of where it is now on the bottom left. This is one of my favorite photos. So they have an outdoor education area adjacent to this one stream, and that bench is where the kids came down and some of the residents and sat by the stream. And there's actually, you can't see it, but around this meander, there was a ladder to climb down into the stream. So, I think the top left illustrates what happens when a tree's root system gets undercut. You'll see the restored condition then in the upper right, and there's that bench again. And then this was a storm event it received just after construction. And again, pointing to the bench. And then there's that bench just the other week. And you'll see that, the stream is still stable. The bed is still in place. The trees are growing in. And in the, 10 plus years it's been restored, we've seen some large storms. So here is Tropical Storm Lee. I don't know if you remember that one from 10 years ago. But when we got done restoring it, we actually put habitat cameras in certain spots around the watershed and had it take at 5-minute intervals so we could see how the stream was responding to these storm events. And you'll see the water comes up, and the one tree on the left side of the picture is about 3 feet above the stream bed. And the arrow itself is actually pointing to an in-stream structure. So the water came up, was over 3 feet deep in some spots. And then here it is the other week, and that arrow is pointing to that same structure that it was pointing in the previous slide. So, and you'll see it's stable behind it. So that kind of, I know that is a concern of some, is how does it respond to these larger storm events? And if it's, designed correctly and robustly, then it can handle these events. I think Columbia, as we discussed, is a great place to do that because of their kind of integrated approach to watershed health with the stormwater program as well as the restoration program. So I think this provides a great opportunity for it, not only to restore the functions of the stream, but then also to provide an amenity to your residents. So picture on the bottom right is every year with the Resident Association, we sponsor a kids fishing day. So people that may not, travel out to rural streams to go fishing have an opportunity to come out and enjoy their stream. So this is a little girl and the fish she brought or caught. So thank you for allowing me the time to kind of walk through some of the basics of this project. I know there are going to be some questions that we didn't answer. We'll try to answer them now during the question and answer period, as well as during our written response. And then also, please check our project website, which will be continually updated for with project information, as well as, feel free to reach out on our project email. We'd be happy to speak with you. So thank you.
So real quick housekeeping, restrooms out the door to the right. There's probably a ballet class going on out there, so they're liable to be young children scampering around. Food in the back. We've been sitting a long time, but we were going to do a break. I don't think we should. I think we should move right into an hour and a half worth of question and answer. I have about 30 people by my count in here and online, about 30 total. So, that's 3 minutes a person with a question and an answer. So I'd ask one question, and let's try to get through everybody who has questions before we start having longer and repetitive, someone asks a second, third, and fourth question. So what we'll do is we're going to move back and forth between the live audience and online. We have more people here, I believe, than we have online. So I'd like to start here. We'll take a couple of questions here, and then we're going to pick one offline. Okay. So we do have questions, I would assume. Yes, ma'am. I know everybody likes the mask, but in my world, it all kind of sounds like this.
It's
So
not like I will speak louder.
okay, that's fine, as you wish.
So thank you very much for the presentation. I have a lot more information when I came in. I would like some specifics on if the issue is sediment flowing into Lake Elkhorn, how does doing cut and fill with basically sediment prevent that from happening? Got to make sure you repeat the question for the online.
Okay, the audience member asked, so if the issue is sediment downstream, how does placing placing fill in the eroded stream channel solve that problem? So it's not just, so what you'll do when you restore it is, let's say you have a 5-foot deep gully or eroded stream channel, and we want our restored channel to be only 1 foot deep. You would fill it up, with 3 feet of fill material. You'd place, let's say, a foot of this stable reinforced bed mix on top of it, as well as different types of structures upstream and downstream to help hold it in place, be it a log or if you needed a rock structure. So it's kind of that underlying fill material, and then you place stable material on top of it so that it doesn't wash away.
It makes it sound then as if you're creating an impervious bank that's just going to send the liquid into the lake.
No, so the follow-up question was, it sounds like we are creating an impervious surface on top of the stream. And so no, it's not an impervious surface. So these are, soil and rocks and gravels that allow the water to soak through it. So you will have a level of surface flow, but then you also have what's called the hyporheic flow, which is the flow that's in between those rocks on the surface. And it can flow and filter between them without degrading the stream channel, and flow on top of it without degrading the stream channel.
Another question. Yes, sir.
I had a lot of questions, but the one I was one of the first ones I get, I can always do other, is you're trying to control invasive species, and how do you propose to control the silt grass?
So yes, stilt grass is going to be an issue. So what's that? Oh, the gentleman from the audience asked how we propose to control the stilt grass. So, we'll go in these areas where we go in and we clear. That's where we're going to try to get that rapid vegetative establishment immediately. Try to get so the stilt grass can't come in right away. But then there will have to be potentially with certain species, there may have to be some level of treatment, be it either mechanical, potentially chemical, or in some cases we've done biological controls with myelin in it. We've implemented some weevils on a test basis in Western Virginia, and that's really actually been very effective with keeping the myelin in it from spreading. So I know it's not the stilt grass, but it could be be an integrated approach to that, and it's going to be a challenge, and it's something we're going to have to address and deal with. So.
My follow-up on the grass is I've been at the Longfellow, where the Longfellow work is done, and that whole, where I was looking at was discussing siltgrass
It's
already.
waste time. It's waste time. You can't walk through there without leaving with 100
You
seats.
can actually see it on the video they showed last week. It's all it's like all the plastic with it. So it's like it's a major problem, and I actually call it devil grass because it's just so much control.
And it chokes out the planting. I mean, you can't even see the planting.
If I may. So one of the things that we do have issues with stilt grass is the transport of seed. And Scott did show a picture. We are going to ask them to clean equipment before they bring it into our site. And that will help reduce the transport from off-site. There's also going to be on-site transport. The deer are particularly bad about moving both stilt grass and wavy leaf basket grass around the seed. Yeah, they're difficult to control. We're having some issues with that. Yes, ma'am.
Where the restoration was made starting a year ago. Part of the problem that everything was bulldozed down to the bare, everything. Trees were taken down, so there's no shade to prevent a lot of that stilt grass to go. Because if it's in shade, it'll go like this. If it's in sun, it'll go like this. So behind our place, it looks like a seed. And people think, oh, maybe that's a meadow. It's not a meadow. It's a disaster. And this is a year after.
So there was a comment on the stilt grass associated with, is that the Harper's Choice project again, John?
Yeah.
Yes, commented the way the stilt grass is taken off in the Harper's Choice project where the trees were taken and there's a lot of sunlight. And I would say that my comment to that is what I tried to convey is why we don't have designs yet. Our intent is to work around the trees to the maximum extent practical and keep that canopy intact. I mean, we recognize its importance for, multiple components to the ecological health and, as you mentioned, helping to suppress some of the invasive species. So we recognize that and we hear you.
Yeah, people need to look at it. Those who are interested, they need to come. I'll show them. It's unbelievable.
I think everybody in this room should go check it out. Or down by Lake Kittamaqundi. I mean, just look at another recent example, I think would be the best way that you could really see what's being described here. It's one thing to see it on a screen, and it's another to go out and actually experience it,
Yes, sir.
So if the climate science today, the U.S. agreed with all the other countries to end deforestation. But I'm strongly opposed to this stuff. I don't want more forests to be bulldozed that was done in the last project. It's just, these are trees that could help us combat global warming. And I would suggest that people, us as go out to where the stream crosses Hesperus Drive, and really to call that a stream restoration, it's a joke. It literally looks like a bomb went off, which converted a lush forest into a barren open field. Now, it's been said in the previous webinar that this stream restoration will prevent excessive dredging in the lakes. Many of us prefer the dredging, which should be done with easy street access without destroying these natural areas. We don't want another destructive stream restoration. I give a question to them. We don't want another destructive stream restoration
which will run heavy equipment into our stream valley and cut down thousands of trees. You say we can't afford dredging, Mr. McCoy, that it's not sustainable. Well, we absolutely can't afford the destruction of our forests done by the restoration projects and make global warming even worse. That is simply not sustainable. We need to control the stormwater before it enters our streams. That will completely eliminate the need for future dredging. We need to do, of course, more than the tiny number of private rain gardens that was mentioned in the last webinar. And I believe, notwithstanding previous discussion, that we have plenty of public space and road easements for non-destructive stormwater control, such as the fire retention that you took pictures of, the fire swales.
No.
Very good. We're just,
Permeable pavement and tree planting. And you had mentioned in your presentation that there would be so many acres being disturbed. I will ask at the end of my question, really, there could be disturbance in a roadside easement. That's a little bit different than the disturbance that's done by a bulldozer in a stream valley. And I'll just add, 5 more seconds. I've seen pictures of the so-called stream restoration that your company did in Reston, which is in Fairfax County. The picture shows basically looked like bulldozers had run through a natural area. It looked like it was as wide as a 4-lane highway. And I can only say thanks, but please don't Fairfax Columbia. So my question is, when will Columbia Association give opponents like me our 90 minutes for our presentations and to run our own question and answer period? Because what has been presented so far is completely one-sided as to be really unfair, I think, to residents.
okay.
So I'm
So,
going to
hold
answer
on.
that, because he did ask when the Columbia Association was going to.
So hold on real quick. So the commenter against the tree clearing, hopefully I get some of it. So strongly against the tree clearing, prefers the dredging along the roads, thinks it'll be less destructive, would like stormwater management done, and does not believe that if you do stormwater management, any stream restoration will be needed, and then takes issue with the Reston project that we presented.
So to answer your question directly, when the Columbia Association is going to give you time to give a presentation that you would be comfortable with, we aren't stopping you. You can do the same thing we did. We approached the Long Reach Community Association and we asked them if we could use their facility. This is Long Reach's facility. And we invited people and we invited the presenters. And I would suggest that if you wish to do that, you should approach Long Reach or any other village association that has a venue like this and invite people and, do a presentation. That's fine.
With all due respect, I mean, here you go. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But the previous webinar seemed to be basically blessed by lady boy, and it seemed to be the official presentation of the Columbia Association. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I guess maybe we can have a discussion afterwards about how do we do this and get the kind of audience that you guys are able to.
Well, we do pretty much the same thing, and we advertise. And if I would have to go back and ask about advertising for private individuals on that. And yes, that was the official Columbia Association position on the larger issue of environmental stewardship and sustainability. So yeah, I'll back and ask, but you're certainly free to ask Long Reach about use of their facility, or like I said, any other village, and invite anyone you wanted to. I didn't hear that.
She asked if the Long Reach building was owned by Columbia Association.
Well, we own the facility, but I believe we lease it to Long Reach, and this is Long Reach's facility. Well, no, they're a separate 501c3, Long Reach Community Association.
If you approached us and asked to rent it, or asked if it's from I don't know if they're paying or not, I don't see where it's being. They're not.
What's that? Next. Hold on, ma'am, one second. So did you want to say anything more to the last question?
Yeah, just in
Here,
terms of,
take that. Sorry,
yeah, sorry about that, just take a few minutes. Just in terms of the comments about Reston, we worked in 3 different watersheds there. The first one was Snake Den Branch, and we approached the access in that watershed by using the sanitary easements because they were covered with trees, and Fairfax County was actually interested in having us take those trees down because you're not, having trees on top of sanitary lines is not good because they infiltrate into the pipes, et cetera. So we used their access. We cleared that access, and you're right. I'd be interested to see what picture you saw, but it was a pretty good sized clearing area.
It's the one on your website.
Okay.
It's really good.
Okay, well, I'll have to take a look at that. But anyway, the other watershed was the Glade, which was immediately adjacent to it is the diagram that Scott had shown on one of the slides, which was a single family homes, whereas Snake Den Branch was more multifamily in general, completely forested. And in that instance, they did not want us to use the sanitary lines. And the county was not interested in going against that, we'll say. So we used the asphalt trails in that instance. We really narrowed down on the limits of clearing. And immediately after we were done, it was just night and day between the 2 watersheds. It was just the approach of the access. And if you go there now, which I'd welcome anyone to come down, I'd be glad to give you a tour of the areas after 12 years. And particularly in the Glade, you'd be hard pressed to see that we were in there. So I just wanted to provide that context in terms of the picture that you saw, perhaps with some other areas that we did in Reston.
Just on that point, if I may.
Sure.
I've been looking at this issue for a couple of years, and people say to me, well, the stream restoration really looks really nice a couple of years after it's done. That's not the point. The point is not what someone's individual personal aesthetic is as to what a forest would look like. It's about the ecology. When you go in and you scrape the forest, you cut the trees, you cut the forest floor bare, you take out the seed bank and the coarse woody debris, and remove and basically kill the Indians and the snakes and the turtles and whatever else is there. And the understory, well, the forbs, 5 years later, 10 years later, 50 years later, you will still don't have what that forest ecology was like. And so to say that it looks nice. Some people think, it looks nice because it's nice and tidy. That really is my point.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but in the Reston Forest instance, 65% of the trees that we surveyed were either poplar or red maple. So, and we had the Department of Forestry come out and give his opinion on the condition of the forest, and it was not healthy at all. With our project, as you saw the list of native trees and shrubs and the diverse nature of the amount of material and the type of material that we plant back is much more diverse condition than it was before we started. So it's not just how it looks. It actually is a healthier riparian corridor than it was.
Well, again, I would argue, people in restoration companies seem to be trying to play God. You can say it's a more diverse forest. You replace the existing forest. So the existing forest is there, and it developed over thousands and thousands of years. So you go in and you could bring in You could bring it in dangerous plants. Some of those uses that weren't there say, yeah, we're increasing diversity. Yeah, but they're really concerned about the ecology. We want to preserve what's there, not recreate some new ecosystem that is not native to that area.
I'd like to say
I'm not sure what we
my
need to.
argument is not with your company, because I believe that if you're in this thing restoration, so of course you're gonna do the best job. But you know how to do the methods that you know. What I'm saying is that we have not gotten a full view of what this is for our community from Columbia Association. There is a great deal of controversy, as you probably know, about the methods used by stream restoration. That's where we need to begin, not with, of course, you know, this is your company, you want to market it, you want to, show us your best work. That's fine, but I don't think that that's what I want as a citizen here. One, I want to know beforehand what other things, I don't want, to be marketed to, because I'm not at that point yet. I found out we were going to have a stream restoration project sort of like on the fly, didn't have any idea. I got something from the Army Corps of Engineers, and I'm like, this is my stream. I lived next to this stream for almost 50 years. I lived next to these forests for almost 50 years. The stream has not, as I observed it over almost 50 years, not dramatically changed since 1973. So why, all of a sudden, do we need the most invasive process to fix it? I don't think it's broken that badly. I mean, there may be places where repair is needed or something like that. But to take this whole area and decide that you're using the most intrusive method, now, granted, you may not be using the most intrusive parts of the method that you've chosen, but natural channel engineering is basically a very invasive process, far more invasive than simply looking at it as you. We have not had an independent environmental study to say this whole thing needs to be done this way. We've not had scientific data, and I believe that we can try, and I'm representative, I'm not saying you're misrepresenting the work you do at all. What I'm saying is it's been misrepresented to the community, and it has not been, the community has not been reached out to and told, what are the risks? What does failure look like here? Why is this kind of dramatic intervention required for this whole area? It makes no sense. The scientists don't agree. There's controversy among all the different scientists and and even in the industry itself. Some people who thought it was a good idea at the beginning don't think it's such a good idea now for every stream or for streams in this particular Piedmont area where you're turning forests into woodlands, into the woodlands rather, into marshes or something like that. I don't know what's going on. It's a very complex thing, and I'm just trying to get up to speed. All I know is since the mitigation bank came into existence, what's happening is bigger, faster, and cheaper. To me, that's a recipe for slow down, wait a minute, look into this, find out if we really need it, if we really need it on this scale, find out what we need, and there is a lot of disagreement about it. I do not think it's a one-size-fits-all. The problem is, when you tool with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Our stream is not a nail. It's different. It doesn't need this. And there's probably a lot of the stream in Oakland Mills, and Brown, they can say the very same thing. So that's my problem with it.
So just a point on that, the mitigation bank actually doesn't exist. That's what the permit
I understand that.
has been submitted for. So,
And now I understand some of that too.
right.
That this is being set up in order to provide potentially great this product, if you want to call it an recreational product, has become a $1 billion industry and has happened in a fairly short period of time, maybe 10 years.
And I'm sure there are people that do the job better than others. I have no doubt about that. And I'm sure that, you know, there are different ways to do it. I'm not at that point yet. I do not see that we need this for our streams in Columbia. What I've seen is where it's been done, it has not been done well. And there are a lot of problems with where it has been done. So I'm starting there. And I have not been convinced that this is the best thing to do for our streams by any stretch of the imagination. That there are not other things that can be done to avoid this, that this does, that this can be avoided. The storm management survey that was done in 2016, stormwater management survey, said that maintenance of things that are ongoing would change the perspective on this a lot, because it would prevent a lot of the stormwater from coming into these streams. Most of the erosion has been vertical, down from stormwater, drainage off the top of the thing.
So I guess my comment would be, because I would like to have some questions online answered. Your,
I feel like what's been happening when we ask the question is we start with incomplete information, it's not becoming incrementally more information, but basically we're getting incomplete information because we're not getting risk, we're not getting downside, we're not getting a really true look at alternatives. Next is the misleading. We've been told things that have led us to believe certain things in a different direction. And third, it's been inaccurate several times. And so there's a lot that needs to happen before I get to the point where the science, the data, all of that is convincing to say we really need this kind of an intrusive process in our stream. So far, no, I haven't been convinced.
well, so to I think answer your question where you are right now, there is an open comment period on the banking permit, which hasn't been issued yet. There is an upcoming public meeting on that, and I would express those opinions there. Okay, good. I'm glad. I think that's important.
Sam, he doesn't interrupt you.
No, it's,
You are extremely rude, and it is hard.
so I appreciate your thought there, but we want to remain civil here. We understand that this is a stressful issue. People are concerned about it. My interest right at the moment would be to answer a question coming off of our virtual participants.
Okay, I think I'm going to read one of the questions. There's just a couple online that I think are good for the group. The first one's a design question, Scott. Will step pool conveyance be used within perennial streams?
Okay,
Yeah.
so the question from coming online was, will step pool conveyance be used in perennial streams? And the answer to that is no. They will be used in kind of more of the intermittent outfalls. What's that?
Louder.
Oh, the question was, sorry, will the stormwater step pool conveyance be used in? Yep, hold on a second. Let's even do this. So the step pool conveyance, the SPSC is the acronym. So the question was, will they be used in perennial streams? So the answer to that is a perennial stream is one that flows year round. So it doesn't, so ephemeral streams only flow during stormwater. Intermittent streams flow part of the year. There's some groundwater input, some stormwater input, and then perennial streams are the ones that flow year round. So the step pool stormwater conveyances will not be used in perennial streams. They're just going to be used on the intermittent or ephemeral outfalls. So let's do it. Can we do it since we did a lot in, sorry, sir. Okay, since we did several here, can we do another one online, please?
Okay. That might be the most technical one. This one, can you stop that? people can hear me better. Did it work? Nope. One moment. Testing. All right. The next question is, I think, more for John. The presentation mentioned a commitment to impervious restoration upstream by Columbia Association, and how much and by when? The question was, it was mentioned, I think there's some confusion. That's why I think I want you to clarify this. But the question is, it was mentioned during the presentation that impervious restoration upstream would be done by Columbia Association, and they're saying how much and by when. And I'm thinking it has to do more.
Okay, so impervious restoration. To
Okay, go ahead.
our budget, as far as building bioretention facilities and things of that nature, that is related, excuse me, to our budget and the availability of funds. We do not work, as a general rule, with CA capital funds outside of CA property, and the vast majority of impervious surface is off of CA property, although the vast majority of the road drains discharge in open space. And we have been slowly trying to treat that where we have open space that we can utilize for that. But as Scott said, when we build a bioretention facility, we do try to avoid putting them in the woods because it's a construction activity and would involve removing trees. There is a certain amount of reluctance to take up mowed recreational areas for bioretention facilities. So when we propose things of that nature, we do have very similar meetings. And you know, some of the impervious surface off our property, we can't treat. No, we don't have the capacity.
Thank you. There's a couple more. I still got.
Okay, the gentleman, can we do one here?
Can I do one more here?
Can we wait one more question? Okay.
This one, it's an acronym, and it'll be a good one. What is the Mpds permit for?
So the NPD, maybe Frank to chime in and help me with this, but the NPDS permit is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit. So that is kind of the ENS permit, so to speak. And that comes into play once we get our erosion and sediment control plans, and it makes sure that all our erosion and sediment controls are in place, and we are not discharging kind of polluted stormwater downstream as part of the project. Right. Yes, sir.
I believe the Mpdes permit also pertains to point sources, and many of the problems we have here are not point sources per se, such as from industry. But my question or my comment goes to, my name is Clement. I'm a 35-year resident of Long Ridge, and the project is currently limited to the area below High Tor Hill, which I think is rather arbitrary. There's significant runoff from Route 108, and Howard High School into the very upper reaches of the stream. And I had the fortune or misfortune of being there Friday afternoon during the huge rainfall that was occurring. I have some photographs and some videos. There is some undermining, some scouring that's taking place in the culvert at the upper reaches there. And John, I'd be glad to share that with you at another time. There's just a tremendous runoff from 108 into the upper end of the watershed that I think needs to be addressed. Velocity of the water was tremendous up there, I think undermining the culvert. I think it's also an area that may be a potential mitigation spot. I know, John, what your parameters are about where you can conduct some of these mitigation efforts, but I think it's something that may need further examination as a retention pond or some kind of a drain pond to store the water for further use. So that's my greatest concern is the limitation on the project, however it plays out concerning all the other comments. Because I think it's artificial to not include this very significant upper reach to the stream that's emptying into Jackson Pond and Lake Elkhorn. There's extreme scouring happening in the trough that leads down because of trees that are currently growing and obstructing the trough. So, with that,
So as a partial repeating question, Bud was interested in how the runoff from Route 108 from Howard High School and a tremendous amount of impervious surface up there that ends up moving down into this stretch of stream is going to be dealt with, if I paraphrase that correctly. So what we like to start with, although I'm not going to say we have a tremendous amount of success with it, is we like to start by suggesting to the Board of Ed that it do a better job treating runoff from its schools. And we do like to talk to the county about road runoff. And what I would suggest is that, you guys could help us with that. Because, again, it's a budget thing. Everybody has different priorities. Classroom education is the Board of Ed's priority, not necessarily stormwater treatment. And of course, the county deals with the entire county, not just our built areas in Columbia. So we start at that end, and as we move into open space, again, we do try to treat where we can. That area above High Tour, that's a fairly narrow strip of open space. I've been up in there before. We can go look at that if there's something feasible. What I would ask is when we have a public meeting like this, talking to residents who live up there about building something in that section of open space, that you come help us, because they will undoubtedly have similar reactions.
Well, just as a follow-up, I would offer there's a naturally occurring buffer there or obstruction that could be part of a retention pond, and it's really no one's backyard. So I'm sure you and I could walk that together and point that out. And it would capture the runoff from, at least from 108. There's a tremendous volume on Friday afternoon. I don't know the statistics for the rainfall, but it was very significant. It's undermining the culvert, and at the lower end, it's undermining and flushing out a lot of sediment where the culvert really re-enters the stream. And
I would agree. I would agree with that. I think as far as tremendous amount of runoff from 108 and catching it, the only thing that I am reticent to go too far with is I don't think that's fair for the residents of Columbia who pay their assessment to CA to have to carry that burden of treating the runoff from a state road, but.
They pay their state taxes too. So
Right.
It's all for the betterment of our own community.
I would agree with that. We had another question over here.
Two quick questions. A couple of years ago, the trail was closed and large equipment came in and they put rocks down in the stream. What was that for if you were doing this? Was that a waste of money? Was that unsuccessful?
No, in this, I can answer that directly. So the question was, a couple of years ago, we had large equipment come in. Actually, it's on that path above Jackson Pond. There have been 4 instances where we've had large construction equipment come in. We've closed the path partially, and we've done small repair work. So one of those I showed last week when we repaired the storm drain that drains the parking lot coming off of Queen Maria Court in the King Charles HOA. One of those was when we came in off Eagle Beak and built an imbricated stone wall where the split rail fence is. We had a really unsafe situation there where the stream had eroded over and was beginning to undermine the path. And so we had to stabilize the bank, and then we put a fence up, keep people from, I mean, that's about a 7-foot drop in there. And then the other 2, when CA took possession of that parcel, there were 3 what are called weirs. They're big sheet pile structures with concrete caps that were built in stream during the construction of that section of Long Reach. And it was really an experiment. They were measuring flow, they were measuring water quality, they were looking at different treatments to prevent soil erosion during the house construction and the road construction period. I have a report on it that I can share. Yeah, if it's not on the web, I can certainly put it on the web. And they left them. So that all happened back in the early 70s. We took possession of the property and really never did anything with them. So they degraded, they were unstable, they were about to collapse. And we went in and had engineers help us stabilize them so that these big sheet pile structures wouldn't collapse and let all of the sediment that had built up and actually built 2 wetland areas sort of behind them downstream.
So when you did these, what was the meaning of that? Cover 2 other things. But you basically spent a lot of work and a lot of money doing something. For what purpose?
Yeah, well, at Eagle Beak, we're stabilizing the bank so that the path doesn't collapse into it. Oh, so the structures that we have built in that stream or stabilized in that stream are going to stay there. They're going to be part of whatever restoration work. No, we are not wasting the money that we have put into stabilizing the weirs or that bank at Eagle Beak or the stream. It's really a step pool conveyance at Queen Maria. They're staying. Those were good investments. The difference is that CA is able to do smaller jobs, and it's a little piecemeal, and we have a tendency to go to the worst spot and try to stabilize it. And what this offers is a larger, more comprehensive fix that would not, and part of the problem with us doing these little fixes is when we armor a 60-foot section of bank with rock like that, it has tendency to increase the velocity as the stream comes down. So we have a tendency to create an issue immediately downstream. And that's not a great way of going about business. Why do we do it? Well, we have safety issues. We can't have our pathways falling in. We have residents who use them. And in some of these parcels, we can't move our pathways. They're too narrow.
If I could, to answer this lady's question, I think what you're trying to say is these projects turn what's called mesic forests into hybrid forests. Mesic forest is very lush. It has poplars, oaks, maple, cherry, all the things that have been feeding our native wildlife, squirrels, foxes, owls. It's the whole food chain. They can't survive in the new conditions. They strip the soil away, lower the banks, and fill in the channel. The stream becomes very warm, it's shallow, it's warm, and it doesn't move fast. They build ponds to hold the water. So it's stagnant and it smells. Even now, a year later on some of these projects, they still stink when we go down there. It's hard to describe. And in regards to the other gentleman's question about up at the Howard High School, I applaud his idea for wanting to put a bioretention pond there. I do think as citizens, we should all be talking to our county officials about our concerns on this. It's not fair that our homeowners association has to pay for all of these problems. I've been communicating with John in the past week about 2 major water main breaks that we had in our neighborhood in Longfellow. One of the street outfalls had literally over 15 inches of sediment packing it down. It's still like that now. It buried beech trees, and all of this is getting ready to head right into the stream that was just restored. We spent over $2 million on, so we wouldn't have to dredge Wild Lake as often. All of this is going to head downstream now. It was one of the most frustrating experiences. I went around the county. I ended up calling John. He's trying to get it mitigated, but there it still sits. And I'll probably go down there myself and uncover the beautiful beech tree because it can't handle those conditions. So I told him wanting to do something about that. There's also a really cool program called the Living Classrooms program that our county should get involved in. It provides TMDL credits for the State Highway Administration. It works with the Chesapeake Bay Trust Fund, and they come into the classrooms and they actually teach about things like rain barrels, rain gardens, the ecology of the stream, and it's these kids' future and what they can do to, promote a better future for themselves. And perhaps the Living Classrooms program may be able to help with that situation at Howard High School. If we had that there, maybe it's something the high school could work with the county and the science department to learn about it. It's just a thought. I just feel like we're not taking advantage of all the wonderful things that we have in this county. Talking about this meeting, I spoke to Tina at Longreach, she's the manager, and I was just shocked at the programs that Longreach has that I feel that Columbia should be using and following as a model. And the sad thing is that a lot of these things I think are available, but I honest to God thought that rain garden program ended 10 years ago. I've lived here since 1969. I knew about it, but how many people have moved in and out of Columbia in the past 10 years? It's like, I feel like we have all the tools we need. We have fire retention ponds, we have rain gardens, we have rain barrels. I believe the county was giving them out for free. We have this Living Classrooms program. There are way less invasive things that can be done to fix the stream, like fixing individual banks. We don't have to trash 6 miles of stream to restore a section of it that's having a problem. That's a repair, and I don't think that anybody questions whether a stream needs to be repaired, or not, particularly if a house or a pipe is going to fall in there. I mean, that's just common sense. But it's also not common sense to think, well, we have this section here that's bad, so I know we're not going to fix stormwater runoff where it's occurring, the problem. We're going to wait until it gets into the stream, think we're going to be able to control the power of water, and then complain when the sediment is in the lake, our lakes were set up to be sediment catch ponds. Like, we're keeping our silt and sediment out of the Chesapeake Bay by collecting it in these ponds and dredging it. Like, we're being more responsible than even other cities are. And-
Sharon?
Yes.
Do you have a question?
Well, you did say we could talk for 3 minutes, so I was using my time. How many minutes do I have left? Tell me. 1 minute. Okay. So, I moved here in 69, on October 29th, 1963. Jim Rouse revealed to the Howard County Commissioners that he had purchased land and proposed to develop the land into a balanced planned community that would fit naturally into the Howard County landscape, preserving the stream valleys, protecting hills and forests, and providing parks and green belts. I've always loved this, and I feel we should preserve this for all future generations to come. And I want to know how this plan fits in with Jim Rouse's vision for our quality of life here and preserving the green valley and protecting these forests. And you have to remember, I not only see one of these every day, but for anybody who does not know me, I have seen many of these in many counties, by many contractors, in various states of recovery. They all have very similar qualities and side effects to them. They just can't help it. And raccoons, bats, and owls are not making their homes in one in sycamores. Sycamores do not produce the oats that the squirrels and the foxes need to feed the owls, etc. You start chipping away, and the next thing you know, you've unraveled the entire thing. So I can talk to you guys more about it after the meeting if anybody would like to, but I don't understand why we need to do this to this degree, especially when President Biden came out and said that we need to preserve all of our forests. This just seems like the antithesis of Columbia and the exact opposite of what we need to be doing with climate change global.
So the resident asked how this fits with Jim Rouse's vision of preserving green spaces, as well as, you know, Biden's recent climate pledge of not deforesting, and how, you know, really it's necessary. So, I mean, I would say that, you know, again, we want the stormwater management. Okay, that needs to be done as well. Even if you do the stormwater management, you are still going to have incised stream channels that are disconnected from their floodplain and are not interacting with the current forest condition. I would say the second, that's important though, because the roots are what help process the nutrients that are coming in through the stormwater and the water. Now,
Yeah, the roots of existing trees, like right
so
here.
hold on, ma'am. So we are not, I tried to articulate how we're not going to clear cut the forest, how this is going to be different than the previous project that was just implemented. Frank invited you, and I would go a step farther and say that we will invite you all to come down and see this in place in Reston. We will rent a bus. We will allow people to sign up, and we will take you there.
Pictures online. Looks like photos of Frank.
Well, then why don't you come and see it?
I said pictures online.
No, come and walk it with me and Frank, and let's see it in person. Pictures are one thing, and I'll say it. I will walk it to you. That goes to the folks online as well. So point being is we are not clear cutting this forest. Okay, we are not leaving this forest with a shopping mall, houses, roads. We are replanting it. We are going to replant it with a healthy mix of native trees. Those trees will have roots. They will grow up amongst the larger trees that we preserve so that we have a nice diversity of age class. And it will be a restored ecosystem when it is done, not a incised stream disconnected from its floodplain. It'll be an interacting, restored, riparian ecosystem.
I'd like to follow up. I heard the beaver theory, I heard the Mill Pond Valley theory. You look at paintings of the 1700s, our stream banks were in size and they had gigantic trees on them. There's probably 9 different kinds of streams. My husband had a 52-year history with our stream, and those banks were very little changed. I think there are residents in here that feel the same way about some of them. I'm sorry, what?
Ours are not cheap.
But all of them or some of them?
All of them.
All of them?
I invite you to come and walk the path from High Floor to Jackson Pond. I've lived here for over 40 years.
Do you have the pictures of 40 years ago?
Do I what?
Have pictures of 40 years ago. To
I
show me.
probably do.
Okay. Well, we
It
should.
doesn't make any difference.
Well, it does. Well, it does. It makes all the difference.
It does make a difference. If you come and look at the trees, the beech trees that you were just talking about.
Yes.
See their exposed
those trees are gonna fall down.
So that's, okay, so listen, so what I'm saying.
Well,
was,
let's let her finish
if
it.
we care, then it's-
Yeah, please. So rules here, we want to be civil, okay? We also want people like you who've not had an opportunity to speak. I think we've had a couple of people dominating our conversation. I'd like to make sure that everybody here and everybody online gets a chance. That's why we're here. We are hearing you, but we can't hear you when everybody talks at once. And we certainly don't want to be interrupting each other. So please.
I invite anybody, I live in Queen Maria Court, which is the center of this project. And I'm really concerned about the trees, the wonderful beech trees and oak trees and tulip poplars that have been there longer than any of us have been here. But they aren't going to be healthy very much longer. I would like to understand what the risks of not doing anything to our street is to those trees and to our community, because come to my house, Joan and I both live at the bottom. Mike lives here too. Our HOA just did a great project trying to help some of the runoff at the bottom where we live. If we don't do anything, what are we gonna have in 10 years?
So to repeat the question, if we do nothing, what's going to happen? And I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you it won't heal itself. The stream will continue to both downcut and meander to the sides. And where it is meandering closer to residents' homes, as it is doing along that section with King Charles HOA, it will continue to do that. And our approach has and will probably continue to be somewhat piecemeal, where we're protecting infrastructure that's owned by CA, our paths, our bridges. We implore the county and help the county when they come in and want to protect their infrastructure. But as far as protecting your homes, that is that's a policy decision. We went to the board, CA's board, several years ago and asked about that. And we have put on hold resident requests to fix streams that residents are concerned about as they move towards their homes. So 10 years from now, I would say that it won't heal itself, and I can't imagine that things will just get better. Now, gentlemen, you have had plenty of time. I would like to ask here in front. Yeah, let's ask right here, John.
I just wanted to say, I live also behind that's in front of the stream. In that last rain the other day, the water was moving so fast that it was actually moving trees that had fallen down along with the water. And I imagine that they'll probably wind up somewhere near that pond, those trees that were flowing in the water. But my concern is I think this needs to be done as I watch the undercutting of those trees over the 40 years I've been there. And more and more of them are going to continue to flow down to the pond if we don't do something about protecting them. Is the wildlife. And, we've talked about that. We have eagles, we have owls and woodpeckers and hawks back there in those woods. And I'm concerned about their habitat. We also have all kinds of deer I don't care about. It's so many of them, they're never going to be extinct. But we have raccoons and foxes and other wildlife back there that drive my dog crazy. But and I'm concerned about what's going to happen to them. The other thing is, I don't want to wait 10 years to see it come back to what it is now. So I really would like to make sure that you are going to protect those trees. And those beeches back there, some of them are over 100 years old. We don't want to see them like that. I would like to see the ones that are being undercut, if there's some way you can bank them up and protect them, protect those roots so those beaches will survive. And that's my concern. But I know it isn't done by just watch. The other day, we just sat there and watched that water flow, and it was flowing so fast. And things were flowing along with it.
Okay, the resident asked and made a comment about, her concern with protecting the trees and protecting the habitat. And I would just say that, we do what we say we're going to do, is document what's there, walk through the plan with you and kind of show how we're going to save trees and have, those areas that we save serve as refugia for the wildlife. That's why we'll, have the plan review process so you can see, what trees we're going to save, or if we have to take a tree, why we have to take it. So that's the purpose of having that incremental, plan development process and the existing condition survey, is so that you can, we know what's coming up and we don't just come in and, overnight we're bulldozing down all your trees. That's not how this is going to operate. So hold on for the gentleman in the room. We're going to go to an online question now.
Okay, I'm going to combine two questions. So one is, when will the design be presented, and at what point are we currently in the process? I'm going to repeat that because you guys couldn't, I know you guys couldn't hear me with my mask. When will the design be presented, and at what point are we currently in the process?
Okay, so I want to revert back to the schedule that I presented earlier. We are currently in what what is the prospectus review process. So that's the kind of initial documentation of the bank that is currently under review. We're going to get comments based on the public notice that people received back in the summer, as well as all the comments received through the public hearing that'll be held on December 8th. We'll have to respond to that, and that's going to not get approved till spring, maybe summer of next year. At that time, once that's approved, that's when we'll get into the existing condition survey, as well as the preliminary plan development. So to answer the question, design, survey and design is not going to start till spring or summer. So it will be summer, fall 2022 till we start having something to sit down and discuss with residents with respect to the existing conditions and potential solutions to the stream in their area. So, okay.
Mandy had a question.
So I did see some trees come down this storm. So I think my rain gauge said 2.5 or 2.75 inches on Friday. So it was definitely a significant storm. I know that there were at least 2 trees, one right behind Queen Mary Court, I think a medium-sized walnut, and another one a little bit further up. I didn't put on boots or a hard hat, and I was a little afraid of the trees that are coming down just from the storms. But then there were at least 2 more under the underpass. So like I do see these really large trees coming down. I appreciate your comment about removing them in sections, because I could see like you have one big tree come down and it takes out 2 other ones, collateral damage. Is there any way to preserve any of the trees that are severely undercut at this point? And then also, like I'm noticing a lot of, we have these large ash stands that are being decimated. Are those some of those areas where you do have more leniency in the design to do it much differently because those trees are already dead or dying?
The comment was, or the question was 2-part. The first was, is there anything that we can do to save some of the undercut trees? And then the next question had to do with, what about areas that have stands of the ash tree, which are currently subject to the emerald ash borer and are likely to die in short order. So with respect to saving the undercut trees, that's something we will consider. I mean, this is, you know, this is interdisciplinary kind of approach where, you know, a lot of us in this room are engineers. We work with arborists, we work with scientists. So in that case, we'd work with our arborist and some of our guys that are experts in construction and kind of evaluate that. So can we save it? What can we do to save it? And, you know, does it pose a danger? So we will, you know, those get evaluated on a case by case basis, and where we can save them and where it makes sense to save them, we'll do that. Other approaches, you know, that we like to do is, you know, where we do have to remove a tree, like if it's not undercut, sometimes we'll just section it off and we'll leave it as a snag. Like if it's, you know, it's going to die, and then that way it provides habitat. You know, so there's multiple ways you can go about it. I would say that areas where there are the green ash, we can analyze them and see what kind of condition they're in. And that could potentially provide an option, but we will, you know, evaluate that when we get to it, kind of see what's going on. I mean, we've walked down there and I've definitely seen, you know, sections of dead ash trees and all that. And,
That's where a lot of the issues are.
right, yeah. So, right. I'm gonna do one more online and then we'll go to another.
The last question was asking about the fish survey and specifically what kind of fish we found in those results. Is that going to be posted online, and where can people go to find those results? Because they were rather fascinating and had a lot of information, but when the report is final.
Currently finalizing the report. There's a second question I've gotten about that in the past day. We will place it on the website where people can go and download it, and they can kind of see how the study was conducted and what the results were in the sample areas. So look to that to come on the project website in the coming weeks. And if you go there on the Lake Elkhorn page, you'll see a kind of a resources type page that has the studies, or that's where they'll be placed. All right. You want to go back?
I'd like to go back to the stream bank, well, the erosion that's being talked about on the stream. And that my observation is that the stream bed itself stayed where it's always been. And the problem we're having is stream bank erosion. And that's where you see the undercutting of the trees. It's actually quite high up. It's not caused by the movement of the water through the stream, it's caused by the water coming into the stream from the edge. For instance, the part where they put up a safety fence and they've got what's it called, armoring, push the bridge that leads up to the primary school there. Well, that actually has been fixed. You know, we were shown that as evidence, but that has actually been fixed. But the reason why that, if you look at the picture on the first presentation, you'll see the steep grooves coming down from the grassy areas. The grassy areas are grown faster than any other area. There's no trees there. And they fixed that, but it's not because of the stream. The stream that's down there is actually on bedrock at that point. It's not going to move. Even by cleaning the very core, it's on bedrock. And it's going down, but the banks are starting to slow because it's the erosion that's coming off the stormwater that's causing those roots to appear. There's a lot of places where the trees have been there so long, but their roots are holding the bank. They go all the way down to the stream, and especially as you're approaching the beach grove as you're going south, you're going towards Jackson Pond. And, you know, all over you can see it's just going from the side, and it's grass there. That whole thing could be replanted with trees, with lawn, and have a riparian buffer. You know, I've been reading the Harris County recommendations. I have the article here somewhere. And, you know, they were talking about how the trees are actually better at nutrient holding, they're better at holding the banks. I mean, you can actually see that. You can see how they can hold the banks, where in grassy areas, they don't. And so much of this is about runoff. It seems crazy to be trying to improve things by moving the stream into, I don't know what it means even, connected to its floodplain. It has a floodplain, it's mapped. We've talked about mapped floodplains in the last one.
And, it will flood at times. But, it's been like that for years, and I just don't see the urgency. I don't see why we have to rush into this. And it just doesn't seem like, it's a multi-million-dollar project, and I think that the residents really need more time to become aware of what is causing the problem and what the fixes are. I think we need to be a lot more creative in fixing this than taking stuff out and moving stuff around. We're going to take so many trees, that's a lot of carbon that's been basically sequestered there. And when you put a small tree in, it actually produces more carbon dioxide for another 15 years or 20 years before it starts to absorb more carbon than it's producing. So here we are, we're heading towards 2030, 2040, 2050. This climate change is coming to become really critical. And, it's like it's coming down our own little bit of the Amazon. It's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I know there are management practices. I feel like there's stuff that we could do in conjunction with Baby Tree. I think we just need to slow down and really have a community effort where we are all happy with what happens. Because so far, we're not happy. It's just we're not happy as a community. And I don't think that I'll be happy afterwards because I can see so many things. You can't just say to me, oh, well, it looks better, because I know about the stilt grass, I know about the erosion, and I know what it used to look like. What it looks like now, I say it used to look like. I feel like this is a failure complete already. And I just think we can be more creative as a community to work this out. If there's a problem, if there's a real problem.
You want to take that? So the gentleman, to sum it up, I guess, he'd like us to, couple of things were said there. One was, I guess, the source of this erosion or what's causing the erosion, grass versus trees. There was something about carbon, and then there was also kind of coming up with more creative solutions. So, I mean, this to hit on the stream bank erosion first is, the process usually there is incision. Then when the stream hits a point of resistance, there is then a widening. Yes. And then could I
So
finish
let's
my,
let him give you an answer. Okay, you ask a question.
No, you talked to me and you claimed I interrupted you last time. Please just let me talk through my answer. So having walked through there and seen the banks, I would say that they're more than just slanted. So you're getting stormwater runoff that is causing stream bed erosion. It is causing stream bank erosion. You can get erosion from seeps coming out of there from the water. You can get erosion from the frost heaves. You get frost heaves. So that's the water in the bank in the winter. If you notice, it freezes, thaws, and freezes and thaws. Well, that causes sloughing of the banks as well. You also get stream bank. You're correct. There's going to be more runoff on a grass lawn than there is from a forest. So that is also correct. So there are multiple sources for what's going on there. But I will say that it's, what was it? The one gentleman sent the picture of an undercut tree in his backyard that lives across from you. And it's, 3 feet undercut into his yard under this tree bank. So there is stream bank erosion happening. That tree has not been hanging there for 40 years. So I will say that there is existing erosion. There is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife study where they came down through and they analyzed the stream bank erosion. And they showed that there is stream bank erosion that is happening. I would agree that trees are better 100% at holding on to the erosion. And that's why after we go through and we create, restore the stream channel, we are going to replant it. And we are going to replant it heavily because those root systems integrated with the stream restoration are what's going to help hold this project in place in the future. I mean, they're an integral part. There is the handling the stream flows. There is the creating the stable channel, but then there is also the vegetative component of it with the trees, and that is 100% important. And I would agree with you. And that's why it's not going to be a lawn, when we are done with that. I think that generally hits how I want to respond to that. I'm going to hold off on you. I'm not ignoring you, but I want to make sure everybody else gets it. So, yep, okay.
Hi, my name is Jill. I've been at Woodlands Court for 5 years now. And I just want to say first of all, thank you so much for having this meeting, being here. I, didn't have to see work here because we had a meeting, so I appreciate that. I just want to give one quick example. I have 2 little kids, and I try to get them outside and have them enjoy nature. And it kind of breaks me a little bit when I show them the streams, and there's these walls of dirt. This is not, and I'm not an expert, this is not like a massive stream. It looks like the Grand Canyon. It looks like really Grand Canyon everywhere. I have my children playing in the stream, and the only alive thing we found, well, it wasn't alive, it was a dead frog. There was a dead frog in the stream. And that was right under the giant beach, beautiful beach road. And this is the nature that my children have. And I had a more condensed statement in my head. Like, I love the wildlife here, and I do not think that what we have is sustainable. I do not think this is what it would be like without us here. I think something needs to happen. I think that trying to manage the source of the water, our houses, is a right attempt. I think that needs to happen, but I do not think that educating thousands of people on the value of rain barrels is going to happen overnight. I don't think it's going to happen in 50 years. I have neighbors who still don't understand the value of rain barrel, even though I am this rain barrel. So I think that we do have to mitigate the stream in some way where the water is going. And I'm really excited for this project because I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's great that this is an issue that's getting attention and getting love. And so thank you so much. And I would say that if there is something that CA can do to show us that you guys are making effort on your end to mitigate as much water as you can on your side, to give away rain barrels, to educate people more. I know we had a rain barrel workshop with Master Gardner, but to keep having this, to keep trying to manage the stormwater at the front end as well. It made me feel a lot better because I do agree with this. I feel like we're managing the symptom of the problem, but I know that managing the problem is almost impossible. That's my rant.
Thank you. I'm going to get to you. Hold on. Is there any more online before we go back to people that are and start? Yeah, I guess, good point. So to summarize the citizen's comment, she's got 2 young children. She does not think that what is in her backyard right now is what a stable functioning stream should be. It looks like walls of the Grand Canyon. So I'm taking that as she thinks something needs to, 1, be done about the stream, and I'm getting a nod that yes, but then 2, wants to see also more education on rain barrels and trying to get the citizens that don't necessarily understand the storm water management component of it to educate that on well. So I guess restore the stream, integrated approach, stormwater and stream. Summer? Okay, I'm getting a nod. Okay. Online questions?
Online question. The project's framed around helping Lake Elkhorn. Will the project also improve Jackson Pond? For example, keep it from filling up so fast? It seems that the lower new catchment basin is already full.
I'll let John take that one.
So the question was okay, very good. The answer, I believe, is yes, it will help Jackson Pond. The forebay does fill up with alarming frequency about every 2 years. We have to go in there and we're either paying a contractor, doing part of it ourselves and getting contractual help on hauling, or doing the job ourselves. And our hope is that this work will stabilize that channel and reduce the frequency with which we're dredging in the forebay, and it does have a tendency to fill up fast enough that it spills out over the coffer dam into the upper end of Jackson Pond proper.
All right. Yeah, you can go. And then we'll do you, and then we'll go to you. 1, 2, 3. How about that? 4. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, I'm impressed with everybody's questions and in detail and know a lot about the background. I also had some friends that in the Marine Corps, so I know that beautiful area and the beaches, which I love very much. Where I'm coming from is that I've lived 42 years in Harper's Choice, Longfellow neighborhood, on Mad River Lane. Our house backed on this so-called stream restoration, which I don't even want to say it was a stream restoration. Let's just say it was a stream disturbance. Our house also sits next to the storm sewer. So for 42 years, I've been looking at it. And so here's the question that kind of comes up. It's what do we do about this? Because there's some areas that don't have to have anything done, that it's been there for a long, long time. And there's some things that really need to have something. Now, in our little area that I know about, which is probably less than half a mile, we have from the street, which is a cul-de-sac, there's 2 storm sewers that going down. Another one down the street and one where we are. And it collects all the rain from the top of the hill and from the other hills coming down. The problem is nothing has been done very much with those storms. They've been allowed to deteriorate, and the deterioration has caused big time erosion of the streams. From those points, nothing with Mother Nature, but those points of the stream here, going for and so it has eroded and trees have come down in the last few years because of the excess rain we've had, and storms that have affected Elkhorn City. But the one next to our house, there could have been mitigation with that, just pulling it way back with stones, rain gardens, or everything to help all that stormwater stopping before it got to the stream. But no, it comes down there gushing so much that probably a section of the stormwater culvert, whatever you want to call it, from here to there, just rusted off and dropped off and went off. And so I've been seeing these things recalled. One of the problems is, oh, maybe it's CA, maybe it's the county, but you know, I've been frustrated, and to see that what happened to our area, they got bulldozed down to bare soil, that all the lowland forests got taken away because something could have been done at very source points of the stormwater.
So the first thing I need to do is, Tina, are we going to be okay going over? Okay, I just had to ask permission for us all to stay here for a little while longer. So your point was, at least the piece that I would very much like to address is the storm drain that passes from Mad River under your lot or your neighbors and comes out into open space and discharges. It's a problem. It's been a problem. And what I would say is we have hundreds, if not thousands of those, or 8,000 of them in Columbia. Most street drains discharge into open space. And we've been working, we've been working on the county on this one, not so much with them. So that's a public facility. It's a public facility in our eyes. It's a public street drain, right? The way the county approaches it, the easement for that drain usually shows up on a site development plan, even the old ones, back into the 70s. The county's approach is if you can't demonstrate that that easement was properly conveyed to the county with a deed, then the pipe that passes under your property is yours, and the pipe that comes on the CA open space is CA's. And we have argued and fought with them for a very long time on that and been relatively unsuccessful. Sometimes we find deeds, sometimes we don't. And yes, the vast majority of them are badly eroded, failing. They're public utilities. And our first position on most of them is CA shouldn't have to fix them. That's a county road issue. And we have so many of them that the ones that we do sometimes get involved in are the worst, absolutely the worst. And yes, the one behind your house, there are several of them that discharge into that section in Longfellow between Hesperus and Elliott's Oak. None of them are in great condition.
When there was where it would break underneath, and there would get guys that come up.
Yeah.
And, yes, I thank you for that explanation. I was told by the county to blah, 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 and there's nothing that, about who owns it and who's responsible. It's very frustrating.
Well, it's worse because sometimes county personnel will come out and say, oh, well, that's CA's. You've been there. And what we do is when we find deeds, because they're in Owen Brown around Angelina Drive, which backs up onto the stream and Lake Elkhorn. There are cul-de-sacs where the storm drains from one cul-de-sac to the next are connected under people's property, and they're actually inlets in their backyard. And the county will tell them, that's yours, you fix it. And when we find deeds to those, we'll actually go around. I've knocked on doors and said, here's a plat, here's a deed. You need to put this with your important documents, because when that fails in your backyard, you don't want to bear the expense of having to fix it. This says it's the county's responsibility. And their general approach on those is they put it on the owner to demonstrate that it's the county's responsibility to do it. So yeah, that one's a toughie. And so I think what I would do as far as the restoration of those outfalls, I'm going to give that to you because I'm not sure how you guys are going to handle that. If the outfall's directly into a stream inside, an area where you guys are doing restoration, how are you going
Like
to
a
handle it?
stormwater outfall
Yeah,
that discharges water?
yeah, 36, 48-inch pipe coming
Yeah.
off a road.
So the way we usually handle them, and one approach we could take, I mean, I don't know the specific situation, but what we can do below those is if it's, an intermittent stream, we can do the step pool stormwater conveyance. So that what those pools do is with the sand below them, smaller storms, they can infiltrate that stormwater when it comes in. But from a kind of a stream energy standpoint, those and what's more traditional step pools can do is they serve as a plunge pool. So they offer grade control, and then they also help to dissipate the energy. So the water rushes out of there, and you put a series of these in there, and it dissipates the energy, and it helps reduce the erosive forces downstream of the step pool series. So that's one of the ways that we can potentially deal with it, depending upon what we see.
Well, it's funny because the storm sewer is right there. And so we used to wait, but I thought, well, why don't I leave those leaves in there? For then it floods the street, but then it mitigates the water coming so fast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe I said this amendment and then you. Okay.
We're sympathetic to the desire to preserve the forest primeval. But if we do nothing along that stream that goes along Queen Maria Court, we're going to lose a number of trees, which, you know, is detrimental to the forest. But the other observation I made is that these gully washes have basically wiped out all the flora and fauna in the stream bed. You know, 30 years ago, my kids would go out and catch crayfish, salamanders, and minnows, whatever. Those things are not there anymore. My question is, will your approach change this ephemeral flooded stream to a permanent stream where you will have some semblance of aquatic wildlife, aquatic plants?
Okay. So the gentleman asked, he noted the observation that, trees, are falling in from stormwater, and that also the stormwater trap within the streams is causing, the flora and fauna within the stream to be wiped out. So, that is, to speak to that, like that is one of the issues that's out there, is there's not stable substrate. There is more to it than that, because there is a water quality issue coming in, but second part of it is there is not stable substrate. So what we have seen when we restore these streams and we put stable substrate in is, you do see some of the benthic macroinvertebrates come back, as they're called, but they're generally a more pollution tolerant species until you get, some sort of water quality control coming in. So then to get to your comment of, we're not going to change the stream type, is because we're not changing the input. So a ephemeral stream will still be an ephemeral stream, and an intermittent stream will still be an intermittent stream. Perennial stream will still be a perennial stream. But we will help, we will maintain the stream flow. We will have stable substrate in there that could be colonized by stream organisms, and hopefully that kind of hits on.
I want to help with that. So we are headed into one of the hardest seasons on organisms living in these smaller streams. Salt is a tremendous impact on water quality in our streams. And, we balance public safety and use of our roads and whatnot with the use of salt. And we, CA, yes. The county and the state and any number of private entities are beginning to manage differently how they apply salt so that not so much gets into these systems. But we see, 5-6-fold increases in conductivity, which is a way of measuring salinity in our streams during the winters. And that'll hold over until April, May, sometimes even June, before that levels back down. And, one of the things that we do on a slightly lighter note for me is I drive around in the winter checking out commercial parking lots, and where I find open piles of salt that aren't properly covered, that have a tendency to be located right next to the storm drain, I report them to the county as illicit discharges. And, I've had some difficult conversations with Howard County General Hospital, had some difficult conversations with our guys. We no longer store salt in the open. We actually spend a little more money and buy bagged salt and store it in container boxes. And we're starting to see more of that. It's a much safer method of doing it. Kimco, who owns most of our shopping centers, their contractors are notorious for open piles of salt. And we reported that so much to the county that they got tired of telling Kimco to get after their contractors, and they just got after Kimco. So there's more to the organisms in the stream than just the substrate. We've got some other things going on that are difficult to balance and hard to manage.
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Here. Here.
So also, when you reconnect the channel to the floodplain, you end up, instead of having that fire hose in that gully, you're spreading the flow out and you're slowing it down. So those little invertebrates that you're talking about, the crayfish, they have a better chance of finding a hiding spot, finding a slower spot that they can stay in that area rather than getting blasted downstream. So there are a lot of different aspects between the substrate, the flows, the chemistry that goes into the restoration. And what we are proposing to do takes care of at least two of those. And it's going to make a difference. Whether it's enough to make a full, bring it back to that has yet to be seen, but it's going to make a difference.
And I guess I can talk so I can see on that for repeat it. So I find that the information that's being presented to be very misleading. And I think, to this gentleman's point, your attempted answers, I will say, to the biology question, you're dancing around the whole topic like Fred Astaire, for those who are old enough like me to remember it. And I'm not hearing any science. And I think it's very telling that when you gave your pyramid chart, missing from your goals was the top of the pyramid, which was I forgot what it's labeled, I'll call it the biological recovery. And I have to read it so I don't leave it out. That the scientific research simply does not support doing these stream restorations, because the research shows that stream restorations rarely, if ever, improve the biology of the streams. And I'm sure you all professionals know that, because I'm sure you've done due diligence and you know all the research papers. And I've read several of them myself. And if you haven't seen them, in fact, I would encourage, I can email them to CA and you can post them. And I'm talking about papers by scientists like Berg and Christopher and Dance and Hildebrand, University of Maryland, Cashal, University of Maryland, No, Palmer, University of Maryland, Pedersen, and there are others. So, to imply, and I think part of the problem is the implication that's the impression that people are left with is that the biology is going to be enhanced. It's a no-brainer that if you armor plate the streams and use geotextile fabrics, some of it being non-degradable, that's a no-brainer. You're going to stop the erosion. But the problem with these projects is you're not addressing the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is this stormwater that's fire hosing off the roads and the impervious surfaces. And I appreciate what the lady was saying about the outfalls being a source of fire hosing the streams. But again, the objective should be to keep the stormwater out of the streams to begin with. Point about the natural channel design. I'm familiar with the natural channel design methodology that you all said that you were going to follow. I've talked to Dave Roskin. Dave Roskin is the gentleman, I'm sure you all professionals know. He originated the natural channel design. Natural channel design is not biology, it's engineering. And I say engineering with quotes. I graduated from the University of Michigan College of Engineering. I'm sure you all know, you look at the Dave Roskin's natural channel design and you're making a guesstimate, and you apply that to another guesstimate, and you multiply it to another guesstimate, and you divide by another guesstimate, and it goes on and on and on. This is not science. Or it reminds me of the cartoon that shows a bunch of scientists standing on a whiteboard, and it's covered with equations, and at the bottom it says, and then a miracle occurs. And that's what you're leading us to believe, that you go through the natural channel design and you're pumping these guesstimates into equations, and then a miracle occurs and you've restored a stream. But the inconvenient truth is that stream restorations do not restore streams. And I'll just final one more 30 seconds.
if I'm at some point allowed to give a presentation, I presented to many state representatives. I talked to Ben Grumbles, who's the director of MDE. Secretary, excuse me. I presented to his number 2 man, one of his number 2 people, Lee Curry. And everyone, they all agree that there are problems with stream restorations. I don't know what they plan to do it, but no one tells me I'm off base on this. They all agree there are problems with stream restorations. What they'll do about it, I don't know. But if I at some point show my presentation, I will show pictures from all around Virginia and Maryland where these armor plating the stream banks, they've been blown out by future storms because the water has not been controlled at the source. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Where to start with that? No. So I think it's important to note, one, the written response that's going to be presented. The intent of this presentation was to give an overview. We can dig into the science. We've got the science, and we are going to provide a written response, and we've got your paper, and we can talk to those studies and honestly how I think they misrepresent some of this stuff in certain ways. You know, I've seen them give these presentations at the Maryland Water Monitoring Council, the Maryland Stream Restoration Association. I've been on, been at panels where they've spoken. So we will respond to that, and it will be forthcoming. So I didn't think that this was the appropriate forum to delve deep into the science. Because I think one of the things to consider is, when you look at, oh shoot, I'm blanking on his name. Hildebrandt. He's looking at segmented restorations without upstream or downstream connection. So, hold on, he did. But if you look at 40, 100 foot, 1,000 foot restorations versus watershed wide scale, okay, I think there is a difference there. I think the fact that we are not claiming a definitive biological improvement to benthics is actually not disingenuous and not dancing around the subject. We recognize that work has to be done on stormwater. We recognize the effect that impervious cover has on, the water quality. So we are addressing the portions of the functional pyramid that we can. I think what we showed is that there's a lot of effort that needs to be done to treat that stormwater. We have the funding now to treat a portion of that functional pyramid that deals with some of the geomorphology and the groundwater and the riparian health. And I think we should take that opportunity. I mean, the TMDL money, right now is getting split between stream restoration projects and stormwater projects. If we take the mitigation funding component of it, and we can apply that here in kind to stream restoration, maybe more TMDL money could be focused on the upland stormwater improvements and, feed this integrated approach that, we believe that Columbia is embarked on. So yeah, we do think there is more to it and it needs to happen. I don't know what really to say about your NCD engineering and all that. I just disagree wholeheartedly. I think there is a lot of geomorphology and engineering that is not just throwing things on a whiteboard and clapping your hands and hoping it works. And I, once again, will invite you to come walk Reston with us and see a stream restoration that has worked, that utilized natural channel design, that has a recovering forest. We give people tours all the time. So come see it firsthand. What else am I missing on there? Did I not hit a point? Hold on. Okay.
I appreciate it. I'll take you up on the tour, but I'll reiterate. And listen, I don't think you guys are bad people. I really don't. We have our disagreements, but I know you think you're doing the right thing. my issue with looking at every stream reconstruction site I've been on, and I've been on a number of them around Virginia and Maryland. And the issue is not what it looks like afterwards, because a layperson can look at it and say, oh, it looks nice. I see some trees coming back, and I don't see the steep stream banks. The issue is, what did it do to the ecology in the footprint of the project? And if you're taking a mature forest and you're cutting hundreds of trees, and again, you're taking out the seed bank and the soils that were there, and the reptiles and amphibians that were there, and trying to replant it, it will take probably hundreds and hundreds of years to come back to what it was.
So
I don't see any
I would-
around that.
I would like to point out, I mean, we've tried to detail what our general approach is going to be, and it's not. So I said, my response to Mr. Bauer is that, it's not, we've tried to show you how we're not going to clear cut this forest. You are going to have areas of refugia. You're going to have areas where large trees stay. You are going to have areas that, things get cut down. I'm not glossing over that fact either. But the fact is it's not going to be a complete obliteration of the stream valley. And that is disingenuous to what we are presenting to you. So that seed source will be preserved to some degree. And that's also part of the problem with the invasive species, is that we are preserving the seed source adjacent to it. And I don't think that the forest is going to take hundreds and hundreds of years to come back, because this area has been cut over multiple times since colonialization, and it has come back to where it is now. John?
So if I might, gentlemen, I think that you guys very definitely agree to disagree. And I think that I would like to end our evening, because we do have a little cleanup. Our time here runs out shortly. I understand the ecology. I understand the concern for the forest, but what I don't hear is, and something that we are concerned about, is some concern about our residents who live next to this stream, who have eroding banks approaching their homes. And I know you live in Montgomery County?
I do.
Yeah. So I respect your position. I respect the time you've put into it, but I would like to ask that one of the priorities continue to be, we need to protect our residents.
Where do you live, John?
I live in Clarksville, just outside of River Hill.
Neither of us live in Columbia. Fair enough.
No, it's not within Columbia. I moved out there and got to watch River Hill get built, the village of River Hill. But I'm very close, and I've lived in Columbia. I've lived over on Tamar Drive. I've lived over on Wild Lake Terrace. But I like to farm a little bit, so I moved a little further
We're
out.
all concerned about the environment as Marylanders.
I would agree with that. But here, as an CA employee, I have an obligation to our residents. So with that, guys, it's 5 till 9.
Can I just rattle off a few real quick?
Well, actually, I can't run over our time here. For my respect for Tina, her time, we got some cleanup that's got to go on. I really would like to say thank you all. We've heard you. We owe you some responses. And I believe we have everybody's contact information. So as we move towards the next phase, we will let you know where that is. And what I would say is there is a public hearing coming up. This is a participatory process. If you can't participate in the hearing, for sure, send a comment in. It is an open period. it is an open comment period to the date of the public hearing and then 2 weeks after that. So it's, the comment period will remain open through November into what, second week of December?
Yes, I believe. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah. So I know everybody has concerns and thoughts about this. I would encourage you all to participate in that process. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.